Welcome to the NBA 2K G League show. I'm your host, Varun Charya. So we're going to do a video here about kind of what the past 10 days have been like. I mean, there's been a lot of two-way spots, a lot of like 10-day contracts being, signed. So I thought it'd be for, your fans who want to know more about these guys who've been kind of coming up, just whether it's a small amount of time or whether it's going to be long-term. I thought it'd be a cool video, maybe just to break down what's kind of going on. So I'm really just gonna be talking about the teams maybe in these past probably like 10 days who have been getting like signed and who have been, putting up players to the G League from to the NBA. So most of this video really will be just breaking down kind of like the signings, maybe my predictions, maybe my thoughts about, some of the moves that are kind of going on. But before I really get into that, I kind of want to talk about this channel. I know it's been a real long time since I've posted on the NBA 2K G League show. I've just had a lot of things come up since like 2020. I think that was the last time I posted. When COVID happened, to be honest, the G League season didn't really happen anymore. They stopped it. And then I think that next season, not all the teams were playing. So there really wasn't much I could really do in terms of maybe like thinking of videos. And I mean, I also got really busy myself. I was still in school and I also had some personal things come up in my life. So yeah, I think at that time, and kind of the past few years has been kind of me just trying to like grow. I'm a filmmaker, I'm a storyteller, so just trying to figure out ways I can grow and figure out how to get better and things I want to do like creatively. So, but I've been really inspired by actually like Bobby Marks when he just kind of talks on ESPN. It's not like a fancy video, but he's talked about like cap or salary or just like his thoughts about contracts. And that's why I'm kind of shooting this on my iPhone, and I thought it'd be a really easy video just to talk about today. So as regarding the channel, if I decide I want to kind of continue to move forward, maybe that'll be something I'll really pick up more on next season and have some more videos. But I think it'd be just fun to just kind of talk about, what's been kind of going on in the NBA. Okay, so some important things I need to first mention that are kind of coming up for the NBA season and the G League season. And also some ways maybe to explain like how two-way contracts work for maybe the remaining days. So first, March 1st, that is when a team has to be able to sign a player, and by that deadline, that player would then be eligible for the playoffs. So I'll kind of talk about this later in the video, with some of the teams, but if a guy does get signed by that date, he can play in the playoffs. So if there's a guy on a two-way contract, he has to be converted by March 1st and then he can be in the playoffs, because guys who are on two-way contracts cannot be in the playoffs. Now another thing I do want to talk about is also, I believe, the way the two-way contracts work with the days. So two-way contracts typically are 50 games. At least now. It used to be, I believe, like 45 days with the team, and now they changed it to 50 games. So it's 50 games with the NBA team, but that is prorated by the remaining amount of games left. So if this player is active with the NBA team during the game, and even if they don't play but they're active, that counts. So there are guys who have a remaining amount of time left on their two-way contract that can only play maybe a certain amount of games. And obviously, like, I'll talk more about those guys later in the video, but the biggest way I kind of have like looked at it is like thinking about it this way: 50 divided by 82, 50 games they can play, and then 82 is how many games are in an NBA season. If you divide that, you get probably about like 0.60. You multiply it by 100, that's like 60%. So now you look at how many teams are left, how many games are left in the remaining amount of a season. So let's say there's like 10 games left, for example. 60% of that 10 would be 6. So only 6 games are left for that two-way player that can play with that NBA team. So yeah, if I explain that. And then the last thing is also another deadline is March 4th. March 4th is the deadline for two-way contracts to be signed. So, I think maybe, it's possible a lot of guys are getting signed right now because they're kind of looking at, the teams are monitoring maybe how they're going to do for the next couple of weeks. It's also possible that some teams are kind of holding off and waiting to make decisions. Maybe that first week of March they'll kind of, move on to maybe other players or look at other guys that he might sign for the rest of the season and then for summer league as well. But yeah, just kind of want to talk about maybe some of those upcoming deadlines and also talk about the way the two-way contracts with the remaining days work. Okay, so our first team is the Philadelphia 76ers. So the 76ers just signed Darius Bazley. I have my iPad here, so I'm going to be kind of looking through his stats to be able to read it to you guys and also be able to talk about anything related to these players and the team. So Bazley, he was averaging, let's see here. He was averaging about, in 33 minutes, he was averaging 20 points, 9.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.8 rebounds, 7.4 defensive rebounds. 1.8 offensive rebounds, 1.1 steals, and 2.5 blocks. And he was shooting about, 30.8% from three. So, I don't think it's a bad pickup from the 76ers. With Embiid out, they've been needing a guy who can kind of be a big man. I mean, he's not the big man like an Andre Drummond, but, he is a guy who can kind of come in and help them, hopefully in a role that can kind of support Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris. So, he's been playing really well in the G League. I honestly think he's probably one of the top guys in the G League right now. So I always kind of thought he was going to get called up, and, I'm glad the 76ers decided to give him a chance because the 76ers, they only had, I think, 12 guys, I believe, on their roster, and they had to sign, it was either 12 or 13, and they had to sign one or two more guys. So another guy I thought might have maybe gotten called up and maybe still could get a conversion from his two-way contract is Ricky Council IV. Council IV has played really well in the G League, actually. I actually got to see him play when the Delaware Bluecoats came down to the Capital City Go-Go. He honestly had a lot of athleticism, and he was, taking some, good shots. So I would definitely say I'd love to see him get converted. I would think that when he had his NBA game of, I think, 19 points and 10 rebounds, his rebounding really stood out to me, and I do remember seeing that in that G League game. His rebounding was a really big part there too. So I would love to see him maybe get a conversion. We'll see if that's going to actually end up happening. It's more about, again, I think with a lot of the G League guys, it's more about who is going to be that guy that can support these stars, that can support, these other players. These are going to be guys who are going to be maybe role players, unless there's like maybe a Fred VanVleet, but these are guys who are hopefully going to be able to support these NBA teams in a way that can help them win. Okay, so next up is the Milwaukee Bucks. So I would honestly say the only big move really was a two-way contract signing. It was Ryan Rollins. He was with the Washington Wizards previously. So he just actually got cut in, I believe it was December or January. I'm not going to discuss the legal reasons in this video about why he got cut. If you really want to know, you can look it up. But, it's interesting to see the Bucks are willing to give another guy an opportunity like Rollins. The Bucks, I think in January, cut Lendell Wigginton, I believe, and Marquise Bolden. And so they had two-way spots still open. So, I think it was a good move. They didn't have anything to lose, on Ryan Rollins. I think he definitely needs time, maybe just to continue to develop his game. I'll kind of read out to you his college stats. When he was with Toledo, he was averaging almost 19 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 1.7 steals, 0.3 blocks, and he was shooting about 31% from three. And I think that's something he's going to continue to work on. But I think he can definitely score. I remember I got to see him with the Go-Go before he got cut, and I'd definitely say I remember he was really good at passing. Actually, I was noticing he would make some really great passes to cutters, and he was pretty good at shooting some good mid-range shots. So I definitely think this is actually a good opportunity for the Bucks just to see what they can do with him. I mean, if it works out, they can continue to bring him back for next season, and they still also have another two-way spot, so maybe they'll sign somebody else. I mean, some people are speculating it was going to be Drew Timme, but then he got hurt, so I guess, yeah, I'm honestly really curious if the Bucks will sign someone to that last two-way spot. And yeah, I guess we'll continue to see. Okay, so next team is the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, I'd say they just honestly signed Pete Nance recently. Also, they signed Zaire Smith. If you don't know who Zaire Smith is, he was drafted, I believe it was 2018. He kind of had a rough, start to his NBA career because he broke his foot, I believe, and then he probably had a pretty hard time kind of coming back. And then COVID happened, and he also, unfortunately, I believe, had like an allergy incident, and he lost a lot of weight. So it's nice that he finally got rewarded with a 10-day contract, and I'm glad to see that he's back in the league. So I don't know if he'll get a second 10-day contract, but he was playing pretty well, I thought, with the Cleveland Charge. So we'll kind of continue to see what happens. But the next guy I really want to talk about is Pete Nance. So if you know Larry Nance and Larry Nance Jr., well, Pete Nance is the younger brother of Larry Nance Jr. and the son of Larry Nance. So I think, Pete Nance has been doing pretty well too. I think, I have his stats. So he's been averaging 14.9 points, 8.1 rebounds, 4.4 assists, 0.8 steals, and 1.7 blocks, and about 33.5 minutes. And he's shooting at around 36% from the three. So I think it was a good move. So something I've noticed kind of with the NBA this season, I'm sure like even previous seasons have done this, guys will get signed to 10-day contracts. And I think part of that's for these NBA teams to kind of see, what it's like kind of up for them, but what it's like to bring this player up from the G League to the main organization, and to kind of see like what they can kind of do, how well they play and gel with the other guys. And I think then when they give them that two-way contract, that's an opportunity to kind of invest into them for a longer term. So, Pete Nance, I think kind of is been one of those guys right now. He did get a 10-day earlier this season. I believe it was like in January, but then he got this two-way contract because Craig Porter Jr. got converted to a standard contract, which, phenomenal story for Craig Porter Jr. If you don't know, I'd honestly go and read about it. Like, love his story, and he's killing it. But yeah, I'm happy at least Pete Nance was able to get called up. Now, another guy I want to talk about in the video that some people are maybe speculating might get that next opportunity is Sharife Cooper. Sharife Cooper, I'm going to pull up his stats. He is, let's see. So in his NBA G League season of this year, he's averaging in about 33.3 minutes per game. He's averaging almost 20 points per game, 4.8 rebounds, 7.6 assists, 1.6 steals, and 0.3 blocks. And he's shooting about 37% from three. So if you don't know who he is, he started his career off with the Atlanta Hawks. I think he got drafted in 2022. He's kind of been a little bit back and forth. I think he's was with the Charge, I believe, last season as well. So, I think hopefully he can get a 10-day. I've noticed some things he's improved. Like, I think his defense is what people were kind of questioning, going into the NBA with him. And I think, defensively, I've noticed improvement. Like, he feels like his instincts have been getting better. And, I think, like, I watched his game against the Grand Rapids Gold recently, and I think it was really cool to be able to see that he was going out and, he would hustle. He was hustling back to go and block shots. Like, if there was a guy on a, trying to go get a layup, from a steal and go down the court, like, he would go chase after and block it. So, those are the type of things that I think are really helping him kind of grow more as a player. And I think I'd love to kind of see him get another opportunity with the NBA. And hopefully, if, they decide with Zaire Smith, they want to maybe move to maybe like Sharife Cooper and give him the 10-day spot, that could be something that they could do. So yeah, it'll be definitely interesting to kind of see what the Cavs do. All right, so the Boston Celtics. Really the only thing I can honestly say is really Neemias Queta. If you don't know much about him, he was a guy who got drafted by the Sacramento Kings in 2021. I believe this is his third season now. He played the Kings for about like 2 seasons, and he was in 3 summer leagues, but he just never really got the opportunity. And then the Celtics decided to bring him on, and when he got cut in September, or I think in October, but they decided to give him an opportunity. And I believe Brad Stevens kind of told Neemias, like, you're not going to be playing much with the main Celtics. You're going to be kind of more with the Boston Celtics because, they might be sitting Porzingis out, or they might be needing to sit Al Horford out. So he's kind of, going to potentially be getting more minutes. And he definitely has this season. So why I kind of want to talk about him? Well, earlier in this video, I was talking about how March 1st is a deadline for the playoffs. Now, the question is, will the Celtics decide to sign Neemias Queta, to a standard NBA contract? It's tricky, right? Because if they don't sign him, he can't be in the playoffs. Which I think he could be really valuable for the team. I really think he'd be an important part for them making that playoff run. Mostly because if something happens to Al Horford or Porzingis, because they have a track record of getting hurt, then there is that possibility that maybe you could kind of move in and get some minutes, maybe as like the backup, or maybe just as a third string if, even during practice. So it's also interesting because at the trade deadline, I believe they made a trade for Xavier Tillman. He was with the Memphis Grizzlies, and then they traded him at like near the trade deadline. So he's a backup center, but I believe he's like 6'8". So, I think it will be interesting because they also have Luke Cornett as their other center. So they do have a lot of like big men. Again, Porzingis and Horford, they have a track record of getting hurt. I would think it wouldn't be the worst idea for the Celtics to sign, Queta to a standard contract. He brings really great size and energy and rebounding and, and blocks. And I just think he's been really great when the Celtics have really needed him. And I think he's just been really ready. And, I'd love to kind of see him get signed. And, now if say he does get signed, that opens a two-way spot. Obviously the Celtics can go sign somebody else. I mean, if you look at like Drew Peterson, this season, he got signed from the Sioux Falls Skyforce. So, but one other guy I would say in the main Celtics organization is DJ Stewart. He's a guy that people have been talking about. He was someone people were thinking maybe could have gotten that two-way spot after they waived Nathan Knight. So it'll be kind of interesting to see if maybe they bring DJ Stewart on, if they decide to convert Neemias' contract. So yeah, it'll be fun to see kind of what happens. So yeah. All right, so the Memphis Grizzlies. So honestly, it kind of goes back to the whole two-way remaining day situation that was kind of talked about earlier in this video. So Jacob Gilyard, he only has 2 remaining games right now. This is at least as of, today is the 22nd of February. So as of February 22nd, he only has 2 more remaining days. He's played 48 games with the Grizzlies. He's still on his 2-way contract. It's a tough decision. I don't really know if he'll get converted to a standard contract. Again, I think the Grizzlies this season, I was telling a friend this, that I think this season really was going to be about kind of getting those pieces that can hopefully help them for next season. Looking at maybe other guys that can maybe come off the bench or can play really well with Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane. And so, for example, if you look at the Warriors in 2019 after KD left, that season was really bad season for the Warriors because that was when Curry was hurt, Klay Thompson was hurt, and then Draymond Green was hurt. So a lot of their good guys were pretty much hurt. And so in a way, I think this season has been able to show players they could potentially bring in moving forward. That was Jordan Poole's at that time when he was with the Warriors, his first season. And so, maybe this is an opportunity that I think the Grizzlies have been really good about, like looking at different guys who can, hopefully help them win. So they signed, I believe, Brandon Goodwin on a 10-day contract, and he played pretty well, I think, in one of the games. So it's kind of going to be tough to see if Jacob's going to get that standard contract conversion. And, if he does hit 50, he has to go back to the G League until they do something about it, or they decide to end up moving on to somebody else. So I don't know. I think it's been really tough, but I will say this. If you look at when the Grizzlies had John Morant back and then Derrick Rose, and I believe Marcus Smart, Jacob Gilyard was then sent back to the Memphis Hustle, partially probably because they didn't want him up with the Grizzlies in case, injuries happen, which they end up unfortunately did happening. But, he was with the Hustle again. So it makes me kind of wonder, like, will they put him down to G League for the rest of the season because they have Scottie Pippen Jr. Now, I'm going to now talk about, again, the remaining two-way contract spots. And, again, like or the remaining two-way days of how they work again. So, like, for example, if the Grizzlies have, like, Scottie Pippen Jr. right now, say he has, I don't know, like, say there's, like, 30 more games, for example, right now. Again, 60% of that. So that would be about, let's see, doing the math, probably about like 16, 17 games-ish, maybe 18. So, yeah, I would honestly say that the Grizzlies are going to be having to kind of face these hardships. They're going to run into guys who are going to be kind of going back and forth between the G League or whether they're going to have that player as their point guard. It's tough for these players because, for Jacob, like, to be able to know the plays and then to not be able to play games and then kind of come back and have to still remember these plays and kind of like, it kind of messes probably mentally with the way you're kind of running things. And so I could definitely imagine for these guys, it must be tough, but, hopefully they can kind of figure out what's going to happen next. Hopefully they make some moves. I mean, they did obviously convert with, Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson. So we'll kind of see what happens, but, it's going to be really interesting to see what they end up deciding. If they end up having whatever roster spots and they convert him, maybe they convert him and then have a non-guaranteed for next season and decide if they want to keep him, or maybe he just ends up going to a different team on a two-way. So, yeah, I guess we'll kind of just see what happens with the Grizzlies. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about two teams right now. I'm just going to kind of go through the Hawks and the Heat. So the Hawks, just a quick note, honestly, Trent Forrest, one of their guys on a two-way contract who's been a point guard, he's out of actual NBA games, so he can't play any more NBA games. He's been out of his 50-game limit, so we'll see kind of what happens there. And then Miami, they just recently, cut RJ Hampton, and then they decided to sign Alonde Williams. So if you didn't know, Alonde Williams was one of the guys who was trying to actually dunk on Victor Wembanyama in the Rising All-Star game for the NBA last Friday. So, yeah, this guy can score. He's really talented. So we'll kind of see what happens, with him, with getting minutes. I mean, he is a scorer, so, ways he can maybe help the Heat in other ways than scoring. But, that's kind of what I'm wondering a lot about. But, he's improved a lot, I believe, and I think Spoelstra said it a lot that, he feels like he's grown. And so, yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for Alonde. Okay, so the Charlotte Hornets. So I want to talk about Marquise Bolden. Marquise Bolden, I'm going to pull up his G League stats. But before I do that, he just got recently signed to a 10-day contract. So what that kind of means, I think part of it is because if you look at what's kind of been going on with Nick Richards, Mark Williams, I mean, these injuries have been happening, and so they've kind of had Nathan Mensah up, and, Mensah's been active with the team for a while, so, bringing in Marquise probably wasn't the worst idea. They needed another center. Like I talked about earlier in this video, Marquise was one of the two-way guys with the Milwaukee Bucks, so it's good for him to get called up and, to be able to hopefully show the Hornets what he can do. And so I'm gonna bring up his stats right here. So let's see. He is All right, his stats. So in 25 minutes, he is averaging 13.7 points per game, 9.1 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.7 blocks, and it says that he's shooting about 31%. I mean, he doesn't shoot many threes, only maybe like half a game that he'll make, but he tries to at least shoot one. So I think that's improvement because I don't think he was really a guy who'd shoot a lot coming out of college. So it's nice that he's trying to expand his game. And I do think he is also a guy that, even though, yes, the Bucks did cut him, he did come into training camp. I don't think the expectation was that he was going to get a two-way contract, and he really did show that why he deserved that two-way with the Bucks originally. So we'll kind of see what happens. I'm curious to see what's going to happen next with his career, and I mean, he's been in the league, in the G League, at least for a little while, kind of bouncing back and forth. So yeah, we'll kind of see what happens, but yeah, I'm excited to see what the Hornets do, and maybe they sign another guy to a 10-day and just kind of see who's going to help them, with Brandon Miller and LaMelo. So yeah. Okay, so really quickly, I want to talk about Mason Jones. So Mason Jones, he was in the documentary Destination NBA, a G League Odyssey. So he's one of those guys. He had a really rough, I think it was like 2 years ago, he might have torn his ACL, or he had a really big injury, and it was really hard for him. I think before that he was with the South Bay Lakers, and then he went to the Mexico City Capitanes. So I believe that's when he got hurt, and so a lot of it's been him trying to rehab, and then earlier this season he was actually overseas, and then he came back and now is getting minutes again with the Stockton Kings. So he's really risen. I think he's really done a good job getting his opportunity to get that two-way contract, and I'm excited to see what he does. So I'm going to read out his stats. In 30 minutes, he's been averaging 13.8 points per game, 3.6 rebounds, 6.9 assists. Let's see. And 0.8 steals per game, 0.4 blocks per game. And he's shooting 50.6 from the 3%. 50.6%. Wow. Okay. So yeah, I think that's great. It's good that Sacramento wanted to give him, a two-way, but one thing that really did stand out to me was actually Mike Brown was talking about it in a post-game interview, that Mason Jones was the guy who he was hyping the team up. He was with Sacramento. He was hyping the team up. He was, getting people excited. The bench, I mean, he was always the first guy off the bench when there was a timeout to go high-five everybody. I mean, that energy, sometimes people don't talk about us, but we think a lot about Anthony Gill or Udonis Haslem, these guys that maybe don't play a lot of minutes, but they do really great with the team, and they have that great team chemistry, and they do the right things to help their teammates, and that type of thing is really big for the Kings. And honestly, I'm really glad that Mike Brown was talking about that, because it's cool to see someone really just be a great bench person on the bench and just be able to support the team. And I think that really spoke a lot about Mason Jones' character. So yeah, I'm just really excited to see what he continues to do next in his career. Okay, so the New York Knicks. For you Knicks fans, let's kind of talk about what's kind of going on right now. So this trade deadline happened, and that opened up 2 roster spots for the Knicks. So they're at 12. They had to get to 14. This morning, it was reported that Daquan Jeffries, who was actually with the Knicks earlier this season, he got cut in December, but then he went back to the Westchester Knicks, and then he just got signed to a 10-day this morning. I think that's a good pickup for the New York Knicks, but they still have one more spot, and so I'm really curious what they're going to do, because they have to get to 14. Usually the rule is you have to get to 14. If you're below 14, you have 2 weeks, and you have to get to 14 roster spots. It's usually the rule in the CBA. So, I'm curious what they're going to do with that last roster spot. They end up bringing a guy from their G League system again that, is familiar with the team. So I think that was a good move. But there are buyout candidates. I think the weakest position I would say the Knicks can kind of look at is probably their center spot right now. Um, you know, honestly, like Mitchell Robinson's still hurt. Isaiah Hartenstein's been kind of getting those minutes, and with Tibbs, he's going to be playing his guys probably almost 40 minutes a game. So we'll kind of see who's going to be that backup. If somebody else ends up getting those minutes, I believe right now one of their backup centers is Jericho Sims, if I'm saying his name right. He's like a guy that potentially could get those minutes behind Hartenstein, but who's that guy behind him, right? So I don't really know. Maybe they could target like Robin Lopez or, maybe a different free agent who's on the market. But, one guy I know who's been playing really well in the G League for at least the Westchester Knicks is Brandon Goodwin. He was actually with the Cleveland Cavaliers a few years ago. I mean, he was doing really well. It's kind of like their backup, and now he's trying to get back to the NBA. I would say he's probably one of the top point guards in the G League right now. So if he can kind of get an opportunity to kind of get back, I would love to see if the Knicks could maybe give him a 10-day. Maybe he could be their point guard behind Miles McBride. They traded Malachi Flynn away, and I believe they waived Ryan Archiegondo. He was from Villanova. I apologize for misspelling his last name or missaying it, but I would definitely love to see if they maybe give him, Brandon Goodwin, a call up. And yeah, it'll be kind of fun to see like what the Knicks are going to do, because today is the deadline. It's Thursday. They have to sign somebody to that 4-team spot. So maybe they bring in one of their two-way guys like, Charlie Brown Jr., Jacob Toppin, or Duane Washington Jr., and give them maybe a standard contract. So we'll kind of see what happens. I'm curious what's going to happen. I mean, I have my iPad here, so I've been kind of checking to see if Adrian Wojnarowski or Shams have been, mentioning anything about a potential 10-day, or if anyone's going to get signed to that 14th spot. So we'll kind of see what happens. But yeah, let's see what happens next. Okay, really quickly, I'm just going to talk about the Dallas Mavericks. They just have one roster spot, which is their 15th. They are at 14, so some people are kind of wondering, what are they going to do next? Are they going to sign a guy from the buyout market? Are they going to convert one of their two-way guys? I think a guy who could get converted is AJ Lawson. I mean, to be honest, all of their two-way guys have been playing really well in the G League. Brandon Williams has also been, with the Mavericks for a lot this season. So, I think AJ Lawson could be a candidate for a potential conversion, and we'll kind of see, because I think when Luka and Kyrie went down, he was able to kind of get in a rotation. So, yeah, it'd be fun to kind of see what happens. I think maybe if they do convert him, then they'd have to convert him before March 1st. So, because then he'd be playoff eligible. So we'll kind of see what happens. But yeah, I'd love to kind of see maybe that he could get converted, or maybe they'll pursue someone in the buyout market. All right, moving on to the Brooklyn Nets. So, I think really the biggest thing that just happened was honestly Jalen Martin getting signed to a two-way contract. I think last month they cut Armani Brooks, and so they had an open roster spot for a two-way, so they decided to sign Jalen Martin. So Jalen Martin, he's been with the Westchester Knicks. I actually got to see him play when he came to play against Dagogo, and I think he's a really good, he's a really strong guard that can really get into the paint and go and get layups. Martin, in about 27.9 minutes, he is averaging 15 points, 4.5 rebounds, 1.6 assists, and he's getting 0.7 steals, 0.4 blocks, and he's shooting about 40% from three. I'm really excited to see kind of what happens with him in Long Island and Brooklyn. I think this move also makes me think it might have also potentially could have come, because if you don't know, Kevin Oila, I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, but he is the head coach now of the Brooklyn Nets, because they just fired Jacques Vaughn. And Kevin actually did coach Jalen Martin at Overtime Elite. So, it's an interesting move. I, kind of think there's a good connection there. So it'll be fun to see if maybe he'll get some minutes with the like the Nets if they don't make the playoffs. So yeah, it's a good move. I think to be able to see maybe what they could do with another guy on a two-way spot, and yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. Okay, so the Detroit Pistons. Honestly, the only thing that really just happened was they just waived Malcolm Caslon. He was on a two-way contract, so now they have an open two-way contract spot. I'll be curious to see maybe who they're going to fill it, by the March 4th deadline. They have Nathan Knight on the team on the Motor City Cruise. They also have Xavier Simpson, and then they also have Tovar Oskovan or Toskar Oskovan. I'm definitely not saying his last name right. But he was the guy that the Grizzlies had picked up on a 10-day earlier this season, and he seemed to be playing well at the time. So, and then they signed him to a 10-day with Detroit. So, I think there's a possible chance that they're trying to convert him to a two-way. So we'll kind of see what happens there. Okay, so the Toronto Raptors, they just signed Justice Winslow and Mohamedou Gay to 10-day contracts, and now they've expired. So they just signed DJ Carden. I'm looking at stats right here, and he was with the Iowa Wolves, and he's a 6'3", 200-pound guard. And let's see, in about 38 minutes, he's averaging 20.8 points per game, 3.1 rebounds, 7.1 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.5 blocks, and he's shooting about 43% from three. So honestly, that's pretty good for a guard. And I think that's going to be, honestly, I think that's a really good signing. And I wonder if maybe them signing him to a 10-day is making me wonder if maybe they'll bring him on to a two-way. So we'll kind of see what happens. But honestly, yeah, I'm excited about, DJ Carden, and if you've seen some of his highlights, he's had some really insane posterizing dunks. So yeah, I definitely would look him up. Look at his college stuff, look at his stuff with Iowa, because he's really talented. Okay, so the Minnesota Timberwolves, they just signed Justin Jackson to a 10-day contract. If you don't remember Justin Jackson, he was from UNC. He got drafted by the Kings in the first round in 2017. He's kind of had he's had a kind of a challenging career. I think he's kind of hopped around at different teams. I think it was with the Celtics, he was with the Kings. So he's kind of been with a few teams at this point, but with the Mavericks, with the Mavericks G League team, he's been playing really well. So I'll read his stats out loud. So in 35 minutes, he is averaging 19.5 points per game, 5.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 0.9 steals, and 0.5 blocks, while he's shooting about 41% from three. So I could totally understand why the Timberwolves would want to add him. I think it's a good pickup because they needed, to fill that. They did have to fill up another roster spot because I believe they were at 13. So now they're at 14. But I think it's a good move because if you can shoot really well with the Timberwolves, I think that was one thing is staying consistent, which was always kind of like one of the things kind of going into the NBA was his consistency, because he could shoot really well when he's at UNC, but at the NBA level, he was not really being offensively consistent. So if he can be really consistent about making shots, I think he can maybe stay with the Timberwolves even further. Okay, so the Portland Trailblazers, they just actually had a two-way spot opened up, and it was because Duop Reef, if I'm saying his name right, he actually got converted to a standard contract, and I don't believe he even actually played for the Rip City Remix at all. So first of all, his story is insane. It's really inspiring. I would honestly go recommend it to watch it, because if you know Matisse Thybulle, he's like really big YouTuber with like the NBA content when he did stuff with the bubble. He actually did a video about Reef's story, about just him talking about it, and it's just really interesting. I highly recommend it. So if you check out Matisse's channel, you'll probably find a video. It's probably I think it's the first video there, so definitely recommend it. But because of that, they had a two-way spot open. So they had signed Ashton Haggins to a 10-day contract earlier, and because I think due to the trade deadlines, they had to move guys around, and Shane Sharp was out. He's been out for injury, and then also Scoot Henderson was hurt for a little bit. So They needed a point guard, and so they brought Haggins in, and so he was actually their starting or their bench point guard in his first game. So yeah, it was nice to see him get an opportunity. He's been playing well with the Rip City remix. So his stats are in 31 minutes, he's been averaging 15.3 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, 10 assists, 1.8 steals, 0.5 blocks, and then he's shooting about 34% from three. So, he's definitely, been in the G League for a while, trying to develop and get better. I think he was drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves. And so to be able to see him kind of get better, and he was actually a G League, all-star. So yeah, it's just been, good for Haggins. And I think it's good for Portland to have some more depth at the point guard positions because, Scoot was injured earlier this season, and you never know, if say they do a trade, they trade in Fernie Simon. So like this, summer. So I think it's just good to have some depth at the point guard. And I think Haggins has been a guy that they've been monitoring in the G League in their system. And I think it's good that he gets that opportunity. All right, so the Golden State Warriors. So they had to get another player on their 14th roster spot because they were at 13, I believe, after they'd waived Corey Joseph. A guy that I think was pretty obvious that he was going to get converted was Lester Quinones. Quinones has been phenomenal. I mean, he was G League Most Improved Player of the Year. He's really, really improved, honestly, with Santa Cruz. And, getting those minutes with the Warriors, I think, really was well-deserved. Something I've always thought about is I think the Warriors have had really good players who've been like that spark plug and has really helped them at times when like Steph or Clay or Draymond just haven't had good games. Like, if you remember like Ty Jerome or, Anthony Lamb or Gary Payne, or Juan Toscano-Anderson, like Quinn Cook, like these were guys who would kind of, when these guys needed to kind of come in due to injuries or maybe the other guys just weren't playing well or just having off games, like they would just light it up. So I think it's good that, the Warriors are looking at giving these young guys these opportunities, and I'm glad Lester got his contract converted. So now the new guy that they just signed to a two-way is Pat Spencer. Now, he has a really interesting story. He's actually a collegiate lacrosse player. He played his graduate season of basketball, but one season of basketball, but before that he was playing lacrosse. So he decided he wanted to pursue basketball as a career. So after going undrafted in the NBA, he ended up going overseas, continue to get better, develop, and then he ended up joining the Santa Cruz Warriors, and he's been there for a little bit. Actually, last year they were considering giving him a two-way contract, but then he unfortunately got hurt, and so he had just gone back, I believe in November from like an injury, and so it's nice that the Warriors were still monitoring him and were willing to give him another opportunity even after the injury. So let's look at his stats. So his stats have been in about 27 minutes per game. He's averaging 15 points, 5.9 rebounds, 4.4 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.4 blocks, and he's shooting 43% from three. So obviously the Warriors, they love shooting. They like guys who can really shoot. I mean, obviously Kerr loves it. So I think it's a good way to add just more maybe shooting depth. You never know if Chris Paul, he gets, he's old, he can get hurt, and Gary Payne unfortunately has been hurt, a few times kind of throughout the past season. And so I think it's just, it's nice that they're bringing another guard. Some guys were, some people were thinking that maybe they would have brought in like Kendrick Davis, Jackson Rowe, Donovan Williams. So on a two-way, but they still have Usman Garuba, they have Jerome Robinson. Maybe, by the March 4th deadline, they might cut one of those guys, and maybe they'll give one of those other guys an opportunity. But, I'm happy for Pat Spencer. It's just a really cool story to see that he played lacrosse and then, moved to basketball. We don't get a lot of those, I feel like, in the NBA. I think it was just Pat Covington who played baseball and basketball. So it's just a really cool story. All right, so the last team that we're going to talk about is the Washington Wizards. Now, obviously, I'm a big fan of the Capital City Go-Go. I've probably been to almost all their games this season. I think I've only really missed like 2 games. I think it was like due to sickness, and if one of your games was actually an away game, was actually a home game. So, but I'm a Go-Go fan, as you can probably see. So yeah. So I'm just going to talk about some things that the Wizards have just done recently. So they just signed Justin Champagnie to a 10-day contract. This was just recently due because DeLon Wright, he was actually spot out and signed to Miami Heat. So they had another spot and they had to get to 14. So Justin Champagnie, he's actually was from the Sioux Falls Skyforce. It's going to be fun to kind of see what happens there because he's been averaging, and let's see, 38 minutes. He's been averaging 22 points, 8.4 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 2.4 steals, and 1.3 blocks, while he's shooting about 30% from three. So I think it's a good signing for the Wizards. Obviously they're not going to make the playoffs, and it doesn't hurt for them to look for guys that can maybe help them win in the future. I am kind of wondering about the move. So here's my thinking that they have two guys who have been kind of more of the Wizards this season, Jared Butler and then Eugene Amarui. So I would honestly wonder if maybe after they do this 10-day that maybe they convert one of those guys or maybe both guys to the 15-man roster. So I would open two-way contract spots open for the Go-Go and the Wizards. So maybe they bring Justin Champagnie on a two-way because he wasn't, on any contract before that. He was technically still a free agent with the Sioux Falls Skyforce. Maybe they can bring him to a two-way with the Go-Go. So we'll kind of see what happens. I mean, I'm noticing a trend where a lot of guys get signed to 10 days and then, like I said earlier, they bring them to two-way contracts later to see how he is as a player. So especially for him being not with the Go-Go but being with Sioux Falls, at least they give him an opportunity to kind of see how he is with the Wizards for those 10 days and if they want to maybe bring him in on a two-way. So we'll kind of see what happens. There is one guy I really want to talk about who's been playing really well with the Go-Go when I've been seeing him at the games. His name is Taylor Funk. So I'm going to read out his stats first. In 22.9 minutes per game, he is averaging 13.3 points per game. He's shooting 45.7% from three, and he is getting about 3.1 rebounds, 1.3 assists, and he's getting 1 steal per game and almost 1 block per game. Now, Funk has been killing it this past recent 7 games. I hope if he can kind of continue to do that maybe he'll get an opportunity with maybe an NBA team, maybe on a 10-day or a two-way. But, he was actually played for Utah State, and then he went undrafted and then signed with the Celtics to play for the Maine Celtics. And then he actually got traded he got traded in a 3-way trade, after the G League showcase to the Capital City Go-Go. So, if he continues to play really well, I'd love to see him maybe get an opportunity, hopefully in the future. Okay, so we're going to go back actually to the Detroit Pistons because Adrian Wojnarowski just dropped some news. So Buddy Boeheim, he was a guy with the Motor City Cruise. He actually, I believe he was with the Detroit Pistons previously, so he's actually a guy they're going to be bringing back on a two-way contract. Like I was saying earlier, Malcolm Castellan got cut, so now we'll see what he does, with Buddy Boeheim kind of replacing that spot. So we'll kind of see what happens with Boeheim. I think Boeheim I got to see him play when Motor City came to play to Go-Go, and I really was impressed by his shooting. I'd love to kind of see what he continues to do and hopefully get a spot maybe regularly with the Pistons. They have been aware of his progress. They have been monitoring him because he was with him earlier last year. I think it's a good opportunity for him, and I'm gonna read out his stats. So, in about 26.7 minutes per game, he's averaging 15.6 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.2 blocks, and he's shooting about 43% from three. So, I could understand that the Pistons were looking for more shooting. I think, obviously, that was probably one of their biggest weaknesses right now as a team, that they're not shooting really well, especially after they just traded Bogdan Bogdanovich, so to the Knicks. So yeah, I mean, I think this was it was a good move, and I think it's gonna will hopefully add more shooting to the team. Okay, so I came back because actually I wanted to put in one more player that actually just got converted, Stanley Umudi. He's been averaging about like 7.3 points per game, but getting like 17 points a night with the Motor City Cruise. It opens up another two-way spot that we were talking about earlier, so maybe we'll see what ends up happening with that spot. All right, guys, so I was actually getting ready to start editing my video to put up for you guys, and then they just dropped news, I believe it was Shams, saying that Tozan Avumwan, if I'm saying his name right, of the Pistons, just signed a two-way contract, so he just filled Stanley Moody's spot, so that means they have Tozan, they have Buddy, and they also have Jared Roden. So those are their three two-way guys. We'll kind of see if anything else happens, but yeah. All right, guys. So I also want to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans because actually there was a signing that was announced a couple hours ago. Hopefully this is probably the last one for at least this video, and then hopefully I can now put it out after this. So first, I just want to talk about Malcolm Hill. He was actually a guy that was signed to a 10-day contract. He's been with the Pelicans G League team with the Birmingham Squadron. And so he has been playing really well. His G League stats are 24.6 points per game. He is getting 5.6 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1.4 steals, 0.2 blocks, while shooting 44.3% from three in 35 minutes. So this is a really good signing, I think. I think he could be maybe a rotational player for them, and I really like it. The second thing I just want to kind of mention that was kind of notable that just happened is actually today it was announced that Carlo Mitrovic, I believe he was their draft pick from 2022 or 2023. He was their second round pick. I think he was number 52, but he just actually signed with the G League, and he actually signed with the Pelicans G League team with Birmingham. So he's going to be now playing with the Squadron, and we'll kind of see how he does. I mean, it'll be interesting if maybe I think the Pelicans are trying to see how he does with the G League with former NBA players and just NBA talent potentially. So I think it's a good move that Pelicans are giving him this opportunity in the G League, and hopefully they'll be able to sign maybe to a roster spot this summer. So we'll kind of see what happens. Okay, and then the last thing with the New Orleans Pelicans is Jalen Crutcher. Now, he was their recent signee. He just got signed to a 10-day. He was actually with the Birmingham Squadron as well. So his stats are in 36 minutes per game. He's averaging 16.1 points per game, 3.3 rebounds, 6.1 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.6 blocks, while shooting 36.6% from the three. So, I think that's also another guy who can, shoot really well, like Malcolm Hill. So it's nice that he's finally getting his first NBA opportunity. So hopefully he can make the most of it with the Pelicans, or, maybe he could be an option in the future for like a two-way contract. So we'll kind of see what happens, but, huge for like Jalen Crutcher. And yeah, now I'm going to cut back to the previous part of this video. But thank you guys for watching this video. If you were able to watch some of it or even part of it, really appreciate it. We'll kind of see if I do more of these. Maybe I can do a weekly or maybe every 2 weeks about G League news, or maybe I'll do more things maybe for next season. But it was just kind of fun to just talk about, what's going on right now. And yeah, I mean, if you want, subscribe or comment below. I'm actually really curious. Comment below what you think about players who could be getting signed to 10 days or 2 ways who are doing really well in the G League, because I'd love to hear your thoughts too. So yeah, thanks for watching and have a good day.